Wanting to end it all used to be a meme. Now it's an aesthetic. People don't want to live their lives, and they say so openly like it costs nothing to say. Haha, funny joke, you know. Maybe you're numb to that by now, so sit with this instead. Life has gotten easier and more comfortable for the average person, and somehow the will to live has dropped anyway. That's strange, isn't it? Because people weren't like this before, or at least they didn't say such things. In ancient times, ending yourself was something unacceptable. In Christian tradition, if you succeeded, you wouldn't even be buried like a basic body because you didn't deserve it. And if you survived, well, you would be imprisoned in a wet dungeon so you don't try those little tricks again. But we don't have to look that far back. We can go back one generation. In England, up until 1961, it was a criminal offense to try to end it all. So we can see if you said something like that I don't want to live type of stuff, you won't get the same here, girl. You would get the let's get you to the station. But that's not it. Surely there is something more in the past than just it was illegal to harm yourself. I mean, a dead person doesn't care if it's legal or not, and it turns out that wasn't the reason people didn't harm themselves, and have this aesthetic. Back then, people simply weren't as depressed. Reports of bad mental health went up drastically in 2010. But how so? The times became better, more comfortable. So where's the catch? It is theorized that the freedom we got is our fault for the rise in depression because we became more lost and actually started questioning the question, what is the meaning of life, but not so philosophically. Back then, we were more concerned with survival, with how we're going to get the next meal. That kept our minds set on a goal. In modern day, there is no struggle, there is no real goal. So the mind wanders. And when it wanders long enough, it starts mistaking the wandering itself for a diagnose. Some people make depression their whole personality because it's trendy to. But let's put those people aside. Let's put all the people that have a actual good reason to struggle, and I would like to look at this from a different perspective and give my answer to the question why people actually hate their lives even though everything is all right. And no, this time it's not the comparison, the thief of joy, social media this, social media that. That horsey is ridden too much. Soren Kierkegaard, amongst philosophers, is known as the father of existentialism, a philosopher that puts individual feelings in the center, and his philosophy is very interesting. A lot of his works for those times shook even the people that represented completely opposite philosophies. The ops were shook even by his work. And of course, he was a religious man that kind of concentrated his philosophy uh, around the individual's connection and relationship to himself, but also to God. But amongst all of this genius, I still see a little bit of pick me girl TikTok energy. You know, he described himself as someone that was touched by deep melancholy since he was a child. Okay, buddy, making self diagnosis at an early age, I see. Anyways, to put it lightly, he doesn't think that life is all sunshine and rainbows. Man is essentially destined to face despair because the everyday routine that numbs us, work, entertainment, habits, sometimes alcohol or medicine, don't remove life's fragility. They just hide it from the view. The fragile life, illness, loss, of someone close, death isn't a risk, it's a guarantee to catch up with everyone eventually. And once it does, there's a human twist. Unlike animals who suffer physically but don't ask why, humans demand a reason for their suffering, like, why is this happening to me? That unanswered why is what produces despair, not the pain itself. So, despair isn't an occasional mood, it's the structured truth of existence, temporarily concealed by distraction, waiting under the surface until something forces you to look at it directly. You shouldn't shy away from this existence of truth, you should embrace it. In his works, The Sickness unto Death and Fear and Trembling, he criticizes people who do not follow the calling, the people that don't take the leap of faith towards the thing they need to jump to. More accurately, the leap of faith is directed towards person's relationship with himself and God. The biblical example of Abraham best describes this thought. God asks Abraham to sacrifice his son that he dearly loves. This makes no sense from any ethical perspective. How could you justify such a thing? Imagine you drive by a park and someone is just essentially trying to sacrifice their son because God told them. Makes absolutely no sense. People would think that you are a crazy person. Yet Kierkegaard says that we need to take this leap of faith because staying frozen or numbing ourselves to distract from this calling, because for Kierkegaard it isn't neutral. It isn't just playing it safe. It's a form of sickness, what he calls despair, and the sickness unto death. And the terrifying part of that book is that he claims that despair doesn't look like despair. Most people who are in it don't feel anything wrong. They're comfortable, they are functional, they have what Kierkegaard calls fictitious health, the appearance of being fine, but internally, out of every looking closely enough to notice they aren't. Sounds familiar? Like most people are all good until they aren't, but then distract themselves of this despair. The reason this counts as sickness and not just a valid lifestyle choice is that Kierkegaard thinks that becoming a self is a task, not a given. You're not automatically a self just because you're alive, which means facing the part of your existence that cannot be justified by, ethics, morality. You're standing before God. Numbing yourself out of that instant staying neutral, it's refusing the one job you actually have. That's why he can call it the sickness unto death. Not because it kills you physically, but because it's a living death. You go on existing, but you never actually become anyone. You stay in this world like a thing than a self. The Abraham story sharpens this because it shows that calling, when it actually comes, will never look reasonable from the outside. Nobody watched a man raise a knife over his son in a park would call that faith. They call the police. Kierkegaard wasn't that discomfort. Kierkegaard wants that discomfort. If the leap of faith ever asked for things that made ethical sense, it wouldn't be a leap. It would just be a good judgment with extra steps. The whole point is that Abraham has no external justification, no crowd of onlookers who could ever approve, yet he goes anyway. That's what separates faith from cowardice, dressed up as caution. Cowardness always has a reasonable sounding excuse ready. Faith doesn't get one and moves regardless. There is a third trap here, which is very important, and it's the sneakiest one because it disguises itself as effort. Kierkegaard calls it the despair of immediate man. Someone who does feel something is wrong, who does try to change, but only ever halfway. He takes a few steps towards the leap and stops short, still holding on foot on solid ground. And when things don't get better because they can't on a half commitment, he doesn't look at his own hesitation. He looks outward. He blames the world. He says life is unfair, or people are cruel, or he just didn't get the right cards. He doubles down on the same half measure, waiting for different results. And this is worse than freezing, because freezing at least knows he's frozen, the freezing dude. He knows he just doesn't want to do something. The half leaper thinks he's already jumped. He gets to feel like he tried, like the failure belongs to the world, not to him, without ever actually facing what Abraham faced: total, undergoing commitment, with no guarantee and no applause. It's despair wearing the costume of effort, which is exactly why Kierkegaard finds it more dangerous than open cowardice. Cowardice at least knows what it's avoiding. This doesn't. These days, people have all the freedom in the world and they hear all of the opinions. Distractions are all around, and the best, safest paths are tempting. It is safe to study engineering, being a doctor, or getting another well paid job. Stability is the most valued thing in the world. Everyone wants to be financially stable. Also, everyone has heard that you should follow your dreams, but even this statement, following your dreams, is set in a code. It's usually making a business, becoming an athlete, becoming some successful dude in the end. There is some kind of logic in being delusional, but at the end, winning is something that is the thing that makes sense, even though if you don't make any sense. While people claim that they follow their dreams, they still cling on to that little bit of making sense. Even being crazy, selling everything you have to go to Thailand and becoming a martial artist, that seems kind of crazy, but can still make sense. But people do that, even making progress towards it, some succeeding and still feeling they got screwed over by the world, that they gave it their best, but they still aren't happy. Kierkegaard has a name for this, the tragic hero, something like the general who sacrificed his own daughter so the army can sail to war. Brutal, but everyone understands it. It serves something bigger, something everyone agrees is worth the cost. It's still inside ethics. It can still be justified. Yet, where is the leap of faith that Abraham showed? That doesn't have any kind of explanation. None of this lock in, one shot, one opportunity, ride or die. I don't need none of these social constructs that are crazy but still justifiable. Where is your leap of faith, your connection to you? And for the religious ones, your leap of faith towards God. And then we say, life is unfair, life is trash, I want to end it. But we never actually jumped. We have tacit. We never walked our path. We walked a safe version or someone else's path. And then we wonder why we want to end it all. Why we never got where we needed to be. Truly, people have to understand what is the leap of faith.